Christmas will really be Christmas when folks are happy everywhere. Hey y'all, it's Ashley at Bookishrealm. Welcome to another day of Vlogmas. This is day number 13. Welcome to day number 13. We are pretty much like halfway through, which is crazy. That was quick to be halfway through. That was really quick. That's great. I'm excited about it. I hope you're excited about it. As you can see from the title of the video today, we are here to talk about something a little on the serious side, and I'm wondering how people are going to react to the title of this video, but it's something that I've wanted to talk about, and this is another one of those videos where I kind of changed title a little bit from the playlist that I had initially come up with, because I think I talked about it being equity and intellectual freedom in the bookish community, but I decided to change it to something a little bit more catchy so people kind of understood where it was coming from with this topic. So if you didn't know, today's song is Christmas Will Really Be Christmas by Lou Rawls, which is one of my favorite holiday songs. It's one that it's an older song, but it most recently became a favorite of mine because you just have to listen to it. You really have to listen to it. So in this song, Rawls really talks about equity and the importance of Christmas is this thing that we celebrate where people are all about being festive and cheerful, but it can't really be the holiday that it's supposed to be until everyone everywhere has been provided the same opportunities and there's equity amongst all people. So when I was thinking about this title, I was like, oh, I could really talk about equity and intellectual freedom, and I wanted to dive a little bit into what I really mean by intellectual freedom. And intellectual freedom is something that is closely aligned to what would be canceling, challenging, and banning books. Because when you are doing that, you're not allowing people to have their intellectual freedom, which in turn is you're creating a problem in equity and access. So that's what I want to talk about. As you can see, on my channel, it's been something that I've been talking about quite a bit lately, and I just reacted recently to No Left Turn's critical race theory book list, and they talk a lot about these books that are indoctrinating and teaching their children to be racist. And it's so harmful because of the fact that these are books that teach children about the experiences of others and what it's like to walk in someone else's experience. It helps build empathy, and what we're doing is we're teaching children early on that it's okay to challenge someone's intellectual freedom, meaning that people have the birthright to access whatever information they want to access. And this is something that's really big in ALA, American Library Association. They have an Office of Intellectual Freedom, and they are the ones that look at all these books that have been banned and challenged throughout the year. They help with cases, the whole 9 yards. So this is why they're so adamant about it, because even if it's something that we don't necessarily agree with personally, it's a point of access where people have the right to learn about whatever they want to learn about. And the moment that we start engaging in book bannings and challenges and canceling certain things, then what ends up happening is that we are taking away that equity that lies within intellectual freedom. And Jason Reynolds recently talked about this in the interview that he did with Stephen Colbert on the Late Night Show. He said it is not a badge of honor to have a book that's been challenged or canceled or basically banned because of the fact that that's one child, just one more child that doesn't have access to that information, that may need access to that information. So one of the things that I wanted to highlight and really talk about is the fact that these things are rising, really rising. People in the book community, I don't think, are actively aware of the fact that this is a thing that is currently going on. And I keep saying this because I do feel like the booktube community, and sometimes even Bookstagram and Book Twitter, Book Talk, are very separate from the larger reading community at hand. It's things that go on that we don't really talk about that are really important that are going on right now. One of these things being the fact that we have an uptick right now in book challenges and book bannings. Right now, I believe that Texas has been leading kind of the charge on what they are trying to do in school libraries, meaning that they have compiled a list, and I've seen the list myself because it's making its way around library systems. It's about 800 titles, mainly books that are by BIPOC authors, books by queer authors, they're making their rounds and they are trying to get the materials pulled out of classrooms. It is the same thing in my state, where my governor actually wrote a letter to the superintendent of education, and he basically was saying that he wanted to get the police involved. He wanted a criminal investigation because he was upset that these books even were placed on the shelves of our schools where children had access to them. And really this all started because Texas found out that genderqueer was in some schools. And if you didn't know, genderqueer is a graphic memoir that talks a little bit about the author's experience and kind of figuring out their identity. What's so fascinating about it is this book is several years old and it's never been really talked about before, but somebody came across it and now it's been kind of like this warpath where people want to remove anything that discusses any type of queer identity, if you're BIPOC, anything that discusses anything related to race and the history of racism in this country. They want it all removed, and that is really, really, really dangerous, y'all. And a lot of times I don't know if the booktube community realizes how dangerous this is. There are people who are now being told they cannot have access to books because somebody in a political position does not agree with the content of that book. I think here in the booktube community we have a certain level of privilege where, you know, we talk a little bit about cancel culture, which I'm not going to really get into the nuances of cancel culture because of the fact that there are pros and cons to it, and I think that what it originally was set out to do is what it's kind of struggling to do now. But I think that, you know, for the most part, we don't really have to worry about that firsthand, meaning that whatever books that we want, we typically have access to. And I think because of the age demographic, unless you're a parent or you're a librarian in this community, these things really don't cross your mind as much, or you don't think about it as much, or you may not be as invested in it because of the fact that it's not directly impacting you. But I am imploring like the booktube community, book Twitter community, BookTok community to really hone in on the fact that this is something that is happening right now and that it's going to continue to rise and it's going to continue to uptick because of the state and the climate of this country at the moment. I don't think that it is anybody's right to tell anybody else what to read. It's a very thin line to walk, and I think that you have, you know, as a parent or a guardian or whoever, you know, if you are the main person or the sole person in charge of the child that, you know, you are raising, you have the right to determine what that child should and should not read. However, you should not be able to make those decisions for everyone else. And unfortunately, you have parents and politicians who are trying to make those decisions on behalf of parents who may feel okay with their children reading certain things or certain materials and not really be bothered by it. But I think that it's really, really tough, and it's really, really hard seeing stuff like this happen because you know what it can lead to. You know what the consequences of stuff like this is. It's so dangerous, and it's not just happening in school libraries. I think that you see a lot of book bannings and a lot of book challenges that happen in a school setting, but they're happening in public libraries too. We actually had to make sure that we were prepared for the uptick in people coming in and possibly wanting to challenge books that were on the shelves because it is just the climate of the country. I have been a librarian now for almost 6 years, and I have had like a couple of comments said to me about some stuff like over the course of my, you know, my experience, but nothing where I feel like a wave of book challenges is about to come in and that it's going to be hard on us as a system, as individuals trying to navigate, like, how in the world do we hear people out about their grievances and why they feel some type of way about certain materials, but also let them know that it's not their place to tell someone else what they can and cannot read. It's a very tricky line to walk, and you know, you have to be so mindful about how you do it. And I know that a lot of like teachers are saying that they're just seeing things just kind of fly off the shelf because their challenges are like going through and they're pulling materials off the shelf, and I just get so heartbroken really over the fact that that's one more book that a child is not going to have access to that they actually may need in the long run. These are books that this child may need in order to kind of relate to an experience that they're currently going through, or maybe they are struggling with something and this book is going to help them, navigate it, or maybe they just are curious about someone else's experience and we're kind of just like closing the door on that and saying no, because this doesn't agree with what we feel, how we feel, what we want you to know, then we're going to stop it. And the fact that someone's identity and experience is a question of whether it's appropriate or not is rather stressful to me. Like, who are you as any politician or any random parent going to say that someone's experience or someone's identity is not appropriate? But unfortunately, these are things that are happening right now. These are things that are going on, and I don't think that people realize how bad it has gotten. This is probably the worst that it's been in a few years because of the climate, the toxic climate that is existing within this country. You've had a lot of people now start talking more about critical race theory, although I always feel like most politicians don't even really know what critical race theory is. They make up whatever they think it is and then assign that made up really honestly that made up definition that they've come up with about CRT and apply it to that and often get it wrong. And they're talking about we don't want CRT taught in schools, and CRT is not taught in schools whatsoever. And it's crazy because telling the truth about what has happened in this country, any books that have told the truth about what has happened in this country, all of a sudden are books that are propaganda and are CRT, and are books that are teaching children to be racist, or teaching children that the color of your skin makes your experience different. And it's crazy because it does. The color of your skin does make your experience in this country, in the United States. I can't speak for any other country, but it does make your experience in this country different. And there is a such thing as privilege. And of course, it's, one certain racial group leading the charge on this. And it is white people who are leading the charge on this, who feel like it is more divisive to teach children the true history of this country and allow them to have books that teach them the true history of this country than to, blind them and lie to them and continue with the, Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue. I don't know. I can't even remember the rhyme, but it's dumb. But we should continue to teach our children stuff like that instead of teaching them the reality of the situation, so they can continue to perpetuate a cyclical lie about the great things that colonizers have done for this country. And it's disgusting. I keep thinking about the fact that, the actual adult book, the 1619 Project, just recently came out, but also 1619 Project Born on Water, the picture book, also recently released. And like I said, I had the pleasure of reviewing that one early before it came out in November. And the amount of people that are challenging that book, I think 90%, I'm like 90% sure that book is going to end up on the most challenged and banned books of 2021 by the ALA, Office of Intellectual Freedom, something like that. I always get their office name twisted. Anyway, the office that works towards looking at intellectual freedom, they always come up with that 2021 list of, or that list of the most banned books of the previous year, most banned and challenged books of the previous year. So I am, unfortunately, I hate to say it this way, but I'm looking forward to that list because I now have some predictions of what I think is going to be on that list based on the foolishness that I have seen all throughout the year. I just want to highlight and point out that the whole idea of intellectual freedom, this whole idea of challenging and banning books and canceling books, is something that the booktube community should pay closer attention to, because it is really impacting the same authors that we read and we talk about. It's impacting a broader range of readers outside of ourselves, and it is something that we really have to think about when we talk about our passions in reading. Because while we may not have issues in terms of accessibility, there are a lot of people right now globally who are really struggling with access and the concept of intellectual freedom, because their political offices or political individuals, politicians, I don't know why I couldn't say politicians, their politicians are creating barriers. Their government figures are creating putting barriers so they don't have access to this information. And in the United States, it's a little bit more difficult than that, but our politicians are doing the same thing, you know. It by no means should any politician, i.e. my governor, say that he wants to get law enforcement involved because he wants to press criminal charges against those who selected those books. I am a book selector. That is my job. I select books for the library. So to hear that there is a man who is a political figure who is willing to press or attempt to press criminal charges against those who do book selections and make choices about what books get purchased for whatever, school library, public schools, whatever. That to me is like, no person in that position should be in fear of their job or their livelihood because you don't agree with the content of a book and you don't feel like it should be taught to a child. But anyway, that's something to really think about. As always, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, click the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications. I'll be back with another Vlogmas video tomorrow. If you want to follow me on social media or support the channel, links will be down in the description box below. All right, y'all.